Just before we get started, we'll quickly want to pay my acknowledgements to traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to any elders past, present, and especially for those who are here this week as well. So thank you very much for having me here today. Can everyone hear me down the back? We all good? Yep. Awesome, cool. So my name's Josh Caratelli. I'm a software engineer at Sledgehammer Games Melbourne. And today we're talking and delving into engineering live ops on Call of Duty World War II, which is very exciting. Speaking of exciting, this is very exciting for me. I've been coming to GCAP since 2011. That's me as a babyface back in 2013. My first time speaking though, so I'd ask if you please, again, hold throwing tomatoes to the end of the talk. If you have any devices, put them on silent as we are recording the talk as well. A bit of context behind me. I'm a core engineer at Sledgehammer Games, so I mostly do core engine programming and whatnot. So I worked on Call of Duty World War II, where I did lots of core engine programming and live ops. I'm now assisting Infinity Ward on Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is coming out later this year. Also, just a quick note, Melbourne t-shirt, we are expanding, may have seen the news, which is very exciting as well. So that's why I'm smiling all week, so, which is cool. Bit of context behind the game. Call of Duty World War II was 2017's entry in the Call of Duty franchise, shipped with 3 cool modes. The first mode being a campaign, following a squad of World War II soldiers in World War II. It also shipped with its signature multiplayer mode, what everyone knows and loves. For the first time ever, it also shipped with a social space called Headquarters, where 48 players could run around and talk to each other, versus each other in the 1v1 pit, stuff like that. It also shipped with a co-op mode being Nazi zombies, because what's better than shooting Nazis? Shooting Nazi zombies. Bit of a career highlight, it was the best-selling console game in North America of 2017, which meant we had lots of players, which is really cool. Lots of players brings issues with scale, though. One of the issues we had at launch was with that social space Headquarters. And yeah, so effectively lots of moving parts, lots of big scale. We're going to need some live ops, which is what we're talking about today. So a quick note about today's presentation. It's not a post-mortem for Call of Duty World War II. As much fun as that would have been, I decided it'd be better to, and more beneficial to everyone here today, to run through strategies that would be both game, scale, and genre agnostic. So everything I discuss here today can be used for a smaller indie title, whether it be a strategy game or a racing game, or it could be used for a AAA title like a first-person shooter. So, you know, it's agnostic in that regard. But the kicker is that everything I discuss today has to be done way before you ship. If you are launching a game tomorrow, which I argue is not a great idea to do in Games Week, but if you are, everything I discussed today is way too late. Live ops has to be thought about way before you ship. The talk is structured really simply, going through a scenario or a question, and then we're using a engineering best practice, whether it be code or a process we use at Sledge. We'll either do one of two things, either resolve the issue straight away, or mitigate the issue for us to resolve at a later date. What we're discussing today is everything from the bread and butter of live ops being solving critical issues, when shit hits the fan, to content locking, processes and tools, and at the very end, having a nice hypothetical scenario, which will go wrong, but then we'll fix it. So wrap everything else together. So, speaking of the bread and butter of live ops, shit has hit the fan. There's a critical issue in live. How do we solve it now? This is probably the first scenario I'm talking about, and also going to be the most important. The way we handle this at Sledgehammer is with something called net overrides. And I also do apologize, there's lots of terms in here and lots of acronyms. But before I describe what net overrides are, I have to describe what muvars are. And what muvars are is a fancy term for console variables. So muvars, or mutable variables as we call them, are console variables on steroids. They are a separate variable type, which can be directly modified on the console. So you can grab a debugger, you can attach the debugger to a game, and then change all the values as much as you want. And we use them all the time. It's more the process part. Anytime you're writing a new feature, you're wrapping your new feature in a muvar. So you can very easily flick it on and off if something goes wrong. If you're replacing a core system, you know, you're doing a muvar that can toggle between both paths, between the old code path and the new code path. If you're even doing things like debug drawing paths, you're really simply going, hey, you know, I have a switch for on, off, and whatever state it's in. And this can be applied directly to live ops as well. Again, for using a kill switch to turn something on and off in live if we need to. And also for things like, hey, really important values like player connecting timeout values. Let's put that on something we can change. How they work in action is quite simple. It's just a union between all the data types that we want. So if you have like a bool, int, uint, float, vec3, doesn't matter. We have a dvar. We have it in our union to use as a dvar. They have a default value, min and max value. And the important thing to remember here is that they are thread safe. As we use them all the time and across the entire game, they are thread safe in both code, game, and UI script accessible. As an example here, we have a host timeout on AMUVAR. So if players are having issues connecting within 2 seconds, sweet, we can just bump it to 4 seconds, see what happens. Does that mitigate or resolve the issue? The kicker, though, is we can't attach a debugger to everyone's game all the time, as much fun as that would be. It would be really helpful for crashes as well, mind you. So how do we change things from afar? And this is where net overrides come into it. Net overrides are the online backing to MUVARs. So we can remotely change these MUVARs from afar and change the settings. So if something goes wrong, we can flick it off. If something is now being fixed, we can flick it back on. If values need to be changed, we can do this from afar in a retail live environment. It is so nice to have code that you've written that should be fine, but if something does go wrong, you can turn it off. The way we actually turn these things off is through 2 different ways. We have versioning with a minor version and a major version. Now, when we do a minor version, this means that, hey, a player's just left, say, the headquarters social space, or they're in there, or they're in the menu, and they will have an update silently applied. There's no notification. It's just, this is for things that are not massively important. Like, we can get this update at some point in the next 10 minutes. That's pretty reasonable. When things need to be done where everyone has to be on the same page, we'll be doing a major version, which is after they've finished a match, and again, we're not going to disturb players during a match. I don't want to be the person responsible for someone about to get like a really cool kill streak or the V2 rocket in World War II, and then be like, aha, update. No, I read it nice enough as it is. So again, not during a match, but when they're ready, we'll kick them back to the front end and say, hey, an update's been applied. Just log back in. You can keep playing. This is again really important for things such as, hey, there's a whole part of the menu that's causing issues, and that needs to be flicked off everyone straight away. We can do that. Awesome. So that was the first scenario. That was mitigating things that have sort of gone wrong already. Mitigating things before they even happen is always better, though, isn't it? So one way we can do that, and sort of the biggest issue that games have, is either launching or having live events like betas and public-facing events. So how do you sort of deal with that, and how do we deal with that? Well, this is sort of basic advice. We use a login queue. We really want to make sure we manage our player base and also make sure we are not destroying our servers straight away on launch day, because first impressions do count for a lot. So as an example, this is a login queue, as you can see. We just stagger players across saying, hey, take a couple minutes before you get into the game. Really good for load balancing, really good for public-facing things. Please learn from us, though. We only had the login queue for our game servers. So again, we're managing the login queue for our game servers, seeing the server load and going from there. We didn't have that for authentication servers, though. So what we had was players hitting our authentication backend servers, then hitting the login queue, and then that's protecting our game servers. If you're worried about your game servers having load and too much load, you've got to be worried about your authentication servers as well. When your authentication servers fall over, things go wrong. So learn from us. Login queue, first line of defense. Awesome. Sometimes you can't mitigate things, and that sucks. Sometimes things do go wrong, and you need to fix them on the fly. How do you do that? Well, the way we do that at Sledge is by having a really quick patching process. So in this scenario, this is how do we actually fix something that's either been mitigated already or that we can't mitigate. So another funky term for you, cached patch content. I didn't name it, that's what it's called, I apologize. This is effectively the ability for us to patch package builds of the game without having to re-kick off a whole new package build. So for a game the size of Call of Duty World War II, it takes several hours to make a new package build for first party. If you need to make one change, whether it be, say, a script change or UI change or a texture change, for example, you don't really want to have to recreate a whole package build to just fix that one issue. So what we have is the ability to quickly go, hey, let's just do a quick layer on top and then just fix that one issue specifically. So things like game script, UI script, data changes, we can all change. Things like C code, models, materials, and map geo, we still have to go through a package build, unfortunately. During World War II's development and live season, which is still going on, we aim for like a weekly release if we need to. less than 10 megabytes. You don't want to constantly hit your players with large downloads, so try and keep it small, stagger them across. And the way it works for a player is, again, same as those net overrides. Every few minutes, when they're not in a match, we'll query for an update. Say, hey, is there an update? If so, then apply it. Nodding heads, I appreciate it, thank you. As an example of what we can do with it, this is one of the sort of main menu front-end screens in multiplayer. So we can very simply go, hey, let's just change this loading screen, or this screen here, for a new screen of the day, or whatever it may be. And because we also have access to net overrides, we can even do things like, this UI layout doesn't look too good, as much as, as good as we thought. Let's change that as well, which is really, really handy to do, from your office down in Melbourne. It's great. So the way it sort of works is we have a content backend server where we download the files from it, and we store it directly on the console's hard drive. So in this case, we call it the cache. At runtime, we prioritize these updated files. So hey, I have an updated file. I should load that instead of the old file. And the cool thing is, since the downloaded data is actually stored on the hard drive, when we can even patch things such as UI front-end files as well, which is really handy. Specifically how it works is this long list of steps right here. But in short, we have a player who's connected to the live environment. Every few minutes, they're checking for a manifest. If the manifest has been updated, we go, okay, sweet. What files have you got? What versions have you got? Are they different? If they are different, we'll take some actions. The actions may be to, remove some files or add some files. And then we'll then apply the update. Once the update's been applied, we'll prompt the user to restart the game, depending if the manifest wants that or not. And then again at runtime, hey, do I have an updated version of the file? Load that instead. It's basic. It's really rudimentary, but it works. So, don't reinvent the wheel. As an example of the prompt that a player will get, so they've been booted back to the front end at this point, and they get this little prompt here saying, hey, restart's been, a restart's required to apply this certain update. So they just hit A, restarts the game, I log back in, and then the update's been applied. Two really interesting options that are quite important for CPCs that we discovered. The ability to mark files as dormant. So you don't want to have players, so you do an update, and then let's say 10 megabytes, player gets it, and in the off chance that you need to revert the update, you don't want to have the player have to then re-download the old update again. That's really annoying. So we have the ability to mark files as dormant, where they just keep them in the cache, they're not considered for loading, but if we need to, we can quickly roll back to that version of the update, and then I don't have to go through a whole another download again. It's only 10 megabytes or less. It's quite small, but it's all about that friction with the player as well. The other option too is CPCs are used for effectively hotfixes, for changing things on the fly. When we have a new package build coming through for the next title update through first party, those fixes have already been applied to that package build. There's no point having those CPC fixes there already. So what we'll do is actually purge the cache each new title update, as often as we can. This slide's a bit of filler, I do apologize. The top 2 points are like, hey, we have a tool that makes the patches, yay. We have Python scripts that handle uploading to it, yay. The two really important points are the 2 points down the bottom. The second last point being selective propping. So what we have the ability to do is, with certification, is say, hey, we've got a package build. We need to do a CPC update to it. Let's do this in the live environment through certification, but only target a specific user. So what we can actually do in the retail environment is say, hey, this user is the only user that gets the update, confirm the fix works on a retail console, and then open the floodgates for everybody else. And that is so awesome to see. You're not going to have issues with dev versus live because you're seeing it working in the live environment, and that's super awesome. Probably my favorite part, to be honest. And lastly, it's really important to train people with the processes of this during development. As I mentioned before, live ops starts before you ship. If you try to do this day one, you might run into some issues and cause some issues as well. So, practice, almost like a firefighter drill. Practice having a fire and having to put it out during development, not during live. So, we talked about mitigation, we talked about resolution. A big part of live ops, though, is content and updating the game with lots of content. So this hopefully should be basic advice, but if it's not, then glad you're here to learn this. How do you content lock without blocking anyone? So again, if you're releasing a game tomorrow, might be a bad idea. If you're releasing it tomorrow, you should have content looking at making, the next season's worth of content already, or that should almost be done. You do run into issues there, though, where you're trying to like kick off a build for this version and like, we're going to have issues with these assets coming in, or, no one commit because we have the build being kicked off today. Like, we shouldn't have this issue at all. So the way we handle this at Sledge is by just having a good branching strategy. Most of you probably already have this. Here's a bit of insight to what we do. So we have 3 different branches, categories of branches. We have a dev or a mainline branch. This is where content and engineering work in. Content will sync to a certain revision that's safe. Engineering will check in on top. Everyone works in here. It's sort of standard. We have a release branch. We use this for releasing the actual game and any title updates as well. So new update for the game, we'll have integrates across this release branch. Then we also have an other branch. This is like a miscellaneous category. So things like demo, marketing, E3, Gamescom, alpha, beta, whatever, that's all there in this other category of branches. How we handle different category branches. Mainline we just check into. Not going to cover that. Release branches. The way we handle this is nice. I like it. To start off, we do a full integration from mainline to release. So both mainline and release are directly on parity. They're exactly the same. If the release branch is in a good state, never is at this point, but say it is, then we'll go, sweet, okay, we can use this to release the update for the game and we should be good to go. But as it happens, QA will find issues. QA will be like, these things are broken, so we have to apply fixes to that branch. So if lots of fixes need to be applied, we'll do another full integrate. If it's only a small number, like 30 or less or whatever it may be, what we'll do is do targeted integrations where people still check into mainline, but tag that check-in as, hey, this needs to make it into release for this update. And then those will be brought across. The reason if they're brought across, they've only been brought across because they had committee approval. Again, another acronym for us is check-in approval, or CIA. So that means that someone sends an email to say, hey, I've checked this into mainline. My JIRA says it needs to make it for the release branch. Can you please approve this to actually bring this across? This sort of solves issues where you have people checking in things that they think are needed, but you have a producer going, actually, it's not needed just yet, or this isn't important just yet for the stability of the build. So, end of the day, a committee goes through and goes, yes, 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 no, 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 yes, 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 no, no, and then they give that off to an engineer to help integrate. That gets integrated across, then they kick off a new build. QA then does their sweeps, finds more broken stuff, more integrates, more build kicking, and you keep doing that over and over again until you're in a point where you're happy with the build, and then you ship that build. Next time we do a next tile update, maybe a month later or a week later, doesn't matter, we'll do another full integrate. Everything's on parity again, and same process again. Target integrations, QA sweeps, committee approval, etc., etc. When we do minor tile updates or emergency tile updates, same process applies, except that we try not to do full integrates. This is mainly for content drops, and mainly for, hey, shit's broken, we're going to do a speculative fix, let's get this working. Effectively the same process as before, though. How we handle demo branches, how we handle E3, Gamescom, all that stuff, very similar. We'll do a full integration from mainline to this demo branch, whether it be the Gamescom branch or whatever it may be. And most likely, the build's in a really good spot at this point. We are locking down for a big event. So the build should be stable. So we'll do mostly all the edits we need to directly in the demo branch, specifically for turning things on or off for Gamescom, because like a marketing, so like public-facing branch would be very different with what it needs compared to like a dev branch and a release branch as well. If there are larger changes, we still can do a target integration, but we generally try to avoid it. And then once we're done with it, we just leave it. And then months down the track, when we need it again, full integration, same process again. Speaking of target integrations, we're engineers. Most of them, have your engineers automate stuff. Like, don't do this by hand. Have the engineers check the diffs on the way through, but the actual integration part, automate that. One thing I've found, because I've done a lot of this, make sure you integrate your backouts and rollbacks. It might be a different term depending on what version control software you're using, but if you have a change checked in and integrated across, and that change is then backed out, make sure you integrate the backout as well. It just means the integration history is a lot smoother and reduce that cognitive load as well. If you're using Perforce, I highly suggest using -v. It means you don't have your files checked out on your local workspace, because generally speaking, you're only using this as a smoke test and then kicking off the build anyways. Awesome. Next scenario, again, was talking about assets and making sure you only include assets that you need for the build. How do we do this at Sledge? Do we do this by hand? No. I tried to do it by hand once until someone went, you know, we have an automated process for that. I'm like, sweet, didn't need those few hours. So what we use instead is asset gates. Now, asset gates are really cool. Asset gates is just metadata that lets you, it's metadata for every asset in the game we have. Anytime content makes a new asset, there's metadata associated for it that lets us know when the asset's going to be released. Is this asset intended for the disc, or the gold version of the game? Is this asset intended for 6 months from now? This means that when we actually kick off a build, we can specify the asset gate for that build and say, hey, you know, we're kicking off a build for next week's update. So it automatically filter all the assets we don't need, and then that means we can not have to worry about having like content coming in from a future update that's going to spoil what's going in. So again, automatically creates filtered builds, and also the extra benefit is it does reduce the tile update size as well, because again, tile updates through first party can be quite sizable. It's a whole package build. So as much as you can reduce that sort of size on that, then that's awesome. What we also have the option to do though, this is point number 2 up there, is we can also release a tile update that specifies all the assets up until tile update 5, for example, but only have the available assets up until tile update 2. So that means we can do one big content drop for players. They only have to download one big update, and then over time we can change a MUVAR through net override and say, hey, the content available is now tile update 3. The content available is now tile update 4. This means that, again, a player might do one big download, like say in January, and we have content all the way up until March, and then have to do another big download, and that's awesome. Again, it's all about reducing player friction. If you have any code features that are need to be put in, we can also again runtime gate that with a MUVAR saying, hey, is the asset gate active? If it is, then we can run this code path. If it isn't, then we don't have to. So 2 special cases with assets. This is quite simple. I don't know why they're called all or never. It's just what they are. Effectively, dev only, and then never in dev or public. Really important to have dev only assets, just in case, again, you don't want dev assets in a public build. And also the never is, again, deleting things can be really scary making games. So just the ability to omit things is really nice as well. So if you're making asset gates in your game, these 2 options are really handy. Awesome. So we talked about mitigation, we've talked about resolving stuff, we talked a bit about content. Big part of live ops though is discovering if shit is actually hitting the fan. It's really important to know that, and how often it's happening and when that's happening. So again, quite simple, you have analytics. You have analytics and crash reports. The way we handle this at Sledge, we have 2 different paths. We have the sort of UI and game script path, and then the first party crash dumps. So we'll start with the UI game script path. So we have analytics for retention stuff. We also have analytics for crash reports as well. So anytime we have a UI error, we automatically log a call stack, the version for it, and an error count. Same with the game script as well. So that means we release an update, we can very quickly look at what all the call stack to the current update and see if anything new has been introduced. The really important part about this is versioning as well, because again, you release an update, you go, oh, did we fix something? If the error count hasn't dropped on the next version, you probably know you probably haven't fixed it. Caveat with this is you might have fixed that issue, but then made another issue pop up later on, so make sure you're actually fixing the issue properly as well. Again, the versioning is really important for speculative fixes as well. Sometimes it's really difficult to figure out what's going on in an optimized build with a really sort of limited call stack. So having a CPC release with a speculative fix and then watching the versioning go on with that and the error count drop is really handy as well. First party crash dumps are different. Probably all seen these. You go to first party, the crash dump website in first party, and a whole host of them. Really important to have an efficient pipeline set up during dev to handle this. So you can automatically pull them down, automatically go, okay, this is our biggest offender right now. Let's start fixing it. This is sort of like a side note to live ops, but get someone really experienced in reading disassembly or learn the basics yourself. I'm not an expert in learning x80, like reading optimized builds. Tony Albrecht is, so grab him instead. Yeah, that's right. But you can, like, I've learnt the basics myself, and it's really handy to be like, oh, this is the general area where something's breaking, and it just helps you home in on what the problem is. Again, I think first party automatically has versioning stuff here, so you shouldn't have to do your own versioning stuff, but very handy. Awesome. So we spoke about branches for like code and content and stuff. One thing that was a really big shock to me coming to Sledge was having branches for different online environments. And it makes a lot of sense. Your backend environment, online backend environments for, say, a public-facing build like Gamescom is going to be very different to, say, what you do at launch, and very different to, say, an internal build as well. So at Sledge, we have branches for our online backend stuff. So we have different environments for different needs. Again, everything from dev to live to alpha, beta, certification, Gamescom, E3, PAX Hours maybe. So it's really important to have different environments. And also we have different environments for different tile updates. If we're doing an update through first party, we're going to update tile update 6 versus tile update 7. They may have very different online requirements to each other, especially with the ability of having these MUVARs and net overrides. We set them per tile update. So we might have, say, that timeout value I mentioned before as 2 seconds in one update, and then we actually realize we need it to go down to 1 second now, or whatever it may be. So that can be rolled out with the next update as well. Really important that you make the process of making these online environments really, really easy. You're going to need a lot of them. You're going to need more than you think. I can feel the discussion that went on a couple of years ago. We were like, what do you need, 5? For World War II, we have the ability to make them really easily because we needed way more than 5. And for every tile update, plus all the different like cert, alpha, etc., need a lot. It's also really important too to have the to diff them quite easily. You ever had the discussion of, it's working in dev, but not working in live? Yeah, had that discussion. But it's okay. I had a senior programmer come over and be like, just diff him. Here's the tool. Just diff him. Oh, thank God. So really important to have that. We use playlists for Call of Duty World War II. So again, predetermined game rules matches. So team deathmatch, capture the flag, domination. Really important to have different playlists, both for dev and live. Again, you don't want to have the risk of mucking up with live, but also having your own playlist for dev is really handy. So it's like I have a Josh Caratelli playlist where whatever I'm working on at the moment is going to be a certain set of rules and MUVARs and whatnot set up as well. The cool thing about having playlists as a separate thing to like the actual package build that you can set from the online environment is you can set the flavor of the week and say, hey, this weekly playlist is now going to be team deathmatch on these set of maps. You shouldn't need to be making a new package build to update your playlists. Don't do that. Have that as an online backend thing you can change. A quick note too: when we do update playlists, all the players have to be on the same page to play with each other. So make sure you do a major version push for that. We run into issues if you do a minor version push, and then all of a sudden people can't find each other. So major version push, everyone gets kicked back to the front end. Now we can all play together. Cool thing too is when you're setting up an online environment for a new title update through first party, as you know, first party gates these tile updates. Everyone can't get that until first party flicks a switch and then their console then downloads that update. So that means you can actually pre-upload everything to the live environment and not care. Which when I first did that, I'm like, it's a live environment. And senior engineer came over, no one has access to this but us in certification. You're fine. And again, also prevents issues of it works in dev versus it works in live. Like, if you're doing a new tile update, for an online environment for a new tile update, just use the live environment because it's going to be gated by first party. As you get on in your title, as your title matures and you get on, it does become cumbersome to update things. So let's automate the shit out of that too. Why not? So we have a scheduler that updates the weekly playlist and updates the MUVARs when we need to. Very scary to first deploying this, so make sure you actually have it tested thoroughly in dev for like several weeks, and then test it in live with selectively propped users, and then watch it for the first few weeks as it sort of like leaves the nest for the first time. We don't do CPCs through an automatic process because CPCs are just for targeted fixes. So don't need to do that automatically. I would just, thank you, like to point out, I had to explain to Activision in the States what done goofing was. And I'm like, done goofing. And no dramas. What? Never mind. So you have someone like me on your team. I'm very I'm excited, and I'm also prone to mucking things up. But that's okay, because you have good processes and tools. Anti-Josh proof your stuff is what effectively this whole section is. So to mitigate done goofing, either don't have me on your team or have really good processes and tools, such as anytime you touch the live environment, you must have the live password checked out. This is some crazy-ass thing checked out on your computer that only certain people have access to. And that's really important, because you want people to freely change stuff in dev and not risk of, oh shit, I just took down the entire world's game, oh no, this is terrible. Don't risk it at all, especially with me on your team, dear God. So by the way, the amount of times that saved me, by the way, I went to do this versus that, oh, love it. Everything we do at Sledge is buddied. This is both for live ops and not. So we're checking in new content. An artist is checking in new content. They have someone buddying the check-in. Where I'm doing a new code fix, someone's buddying that check-in, whether it be a code review or someone over the shoulder going, yep, that looks good. This is really important for the next part being of always using a wrapper script to interface. Always use a wrapper script to interface with your backend scripts as well. So, bit of anecdote time. So shout out to Bruce Sutherland, who's now returned back to Dundee, still at Sledge, but working from Scotland, where it's much colder. He was down in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and I was doing live ops with him, and it's my first time doing live ops. So I've gone, oh yeah, upload to online environment. Had the live password checked out, by the way, because I was dealing with a live environment, so this is okay. I'm like, live environment, sweet. Okay, this Python script, command prompt. All right, cool, chuck in this Python script, type in the command and arguments. I need 2, not 3, or whatever. His face is just going aghast. Thankfully, he's butting me at this point, just takes my hands off the keyboard. No. It's not how we do this. Anytime we interface with our online backend, we interface through a wrapper script. So yes, we have scripts which upload stuff to the online environment, but we have a wrapper script that you must use to interface with that. Because the wrapper scripts have things like sanity checks, do you want the live environment? It's not a yes or no answer. It is, please type live to say you want the live environment. Again, when you're in that mode of, I'm on autopilot, I've done this 100 times before. Yes, no, yes, oh shit, I just broke everything. Don't risk it. Have really annoying, and I mean really annoying sanity checks. You want this thing? Type it in word for word, letter for letter. It does get annoying, but also prevents the risk of you bringing down all your servers. So, buddy everything, have a live password so most people don't have to worry about it. If you do have to worry about it, you're going to have sanity checks as well. Anti-Josh proof. It's excellent. When you are updating, though, make sure you notify everyone, and I mean everyone. You have a checklist of people you have to notify, and you check that off each and every time. So it's really important to do this well in advance as well, because if you have an online team, and all of a sudden the analytics start sparking off because they have people disconnecting because they're getting an update. If they don't know it's an update, they may turn on the fire extinguisher. So don't do that. It's courteous to let everyone else know as well, but also really important to, again, I think I stressed that enough. Notify everybody. Also really important to monitor your internal analytics and socials as well. So internal analytics are really important. You'd be surprised how quick Reddit will be oh my god, there's an update. People really want that karma. They will do it straight away. It's also interesting to see, how quickly your Reddit versus internal analytics get updated as well. Live retail kits are quite handy. As you may know, Sledgehammer Games is based in the Bay Area as well as Melbourne, so we have access to retail kits in 2 environments. So when an update does go live, we can see in 2 different regions going, hey, sweet, the update's gone live, everything's working fine. A couple of years ago when I was doing this as well, it was really nice to have, talking to someone on Slack and go, okay, the update's hit your kit, now it's hit my kit, yours is fine, sweet. If I had the option, I'd have a retail kit in every region. Some things do go wrong with different regions occasionally, so as much as you can, if you have someone overseas, get them to get on, turn on their console, that'd be nice. Cool, so we're making good time, but also, are we? Yes, we're making excellent time. Excellent. So, Gone through a lot of different things. Been talking a lot. Been talking about mitigation. Been talking about resolution. Been talking about content locking and stuff. It's time to break something and then fix it. It's the fun part of the presentation. So we're going to go through a hypothetical scenario right now. And the hypothetical scenario is we're updating the game and you didn't anti-Josh-proof something. Something's going to go wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is going to release a tile update. We are releasing a tile update, sorry. To do that, we're going to set up the release branch. So again, same as that earlier slide, we're going to do a full integrate, do target integrations, and then QA's going to do their sweeps. They'll find things that are wrong, target integrations, committee approval, integrate stuff across. Keep doing that over and over and over again. Now the build's in a good state. Then we're going to set up the online environment as well. So we're going to do net overrides, we're going to do asset gates, we're going to be doing playlists and CPCs. Keep doing this until it's in a good spot as well. Because it is a tile update that is gated by first party, we can pre-upload this all to live, which is quite handy. More things have gone wrong. More target integrations, more QA sweeps, more committee approval. Now the build's in a good state. Again, try again. That was me just covering for me going a slide early. I do apologize. Sweet. Now the build's in a great state. We're going to submit to first party. That's usually it, except I have a producer running down the hall. I'm sorry. The loading screen has to change. We just realized something was wrong with it. At this point, generally speaking, all right, I'll kick a new set of builds. It'll take 6 hours, whatever. But since we've planned for live ops before we shipped, we have the ability to have CPCs and stuff in the build. So we can go, sweet, all right, well, it's just a loading screen. We can just CPC that. The build's still going to certification. We're just going to release a CPC on top of that. Day is saved. Yay. Awesome. I'm going to release a tile update. Nice and simple. I'm going to do this in an off-peak time, trying to avoid, impacting as many players as possible. The CPC will be automatically deployed at this point already. If there are any further CPCs, we can deploy it at this time too. It's supposed to go through certification though. Playlists and then override pushes, and then we'll monitor kits, analytics, and socials. But alas, you did not Josh-proof your program. QA didn't catch the biggest bug of all. This actually does happen. You can still do this in the live game. We decided there wasn't an issue, so we kept it. Yay. This is purely an excuse for me to show this video in a presentation, by the way. I got approval. Yay. Instead, let's imagine something else went wrong. Let's imagine I touched the UI. I'm not a UI programmer. I broke something. Oh no, there's a UI issue. No one caught it. Now we got to fix it, right? How are we going to fix it? So the approach is going to be quite simple. Since it's Sledge, everything has a MUVAR around its system, around those code paths, right? We can very simply go, hey, we're going to turn off that code path. That menu flow at the moment, it's locked. No one can get to it. So this is, for example, really important for say you have a UI bug that causes a no more action where players get stuck. We can prevent this by just locking people out of that menu. Really hope it's not a really important part of your menu. It's just like some random thing, right? At the same time, while players aren't having this issue anymore because it's been mitigated by being locked off with a kill switch, we are checking those UI scripts call stacks and looking at the solution. We find the solution, then we create a CPC. We're going to test the CPC. We're going to test the CPC in dev and in live with an access control list. We're going to target a certain kit, insert, and say, hey, you've now got the CPC. Does it fix the issue? Yes, it does. Yes, it doesn't, etc. Keep going through the process. Oh, it does now? Sweet. Then we're ready to release it. So we're going to deploy the CPC, and at the same time, we do this in an off-peak time if we can, unless it's an emergency. Deploy the CPC, and we're also going to do a net overrides push to undo that kill switch. Really important you undo the kill switch, otherwise you've got the thing fixed and then everything's still locked. And then we're going to monitor kits, analytics, and socials. If you're lucky, no one's noticed. If you're unlucky, people have noticed, but they go, sweet, oh, it's been fixed now. Sweet, awesome, enjoy. Sweet, I can go play the game and be terrible at it still. It's great. I think we're good for time? Good 10 minutes for questions? Sweet, awesome. Well, maybe a few good questions. So thank you very much for having me. This is how we handle engineering live ops in Call of Duty World War II. Things like mitigating stuff, resolving stuff, content locking properly, branches. Hopefully you've learned something. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you. Yeah. There are...
There's a mic in the middle,
Yeah.
if anybody has a question.
Or heckles, either or. Yeah, true, actually, yeah. Go for it.
Hi, I was wondering how you target, like you say you have access controllers to target specific users.
Yep.
Any more detail on how is that, do they get a different manifest or?
Yeah, really great question. So the way that works in the online backend is we actually target a specific username or a UID or whatever, depending on platform you're on. So we'll generally this is like kits and retail users that we know. So we go, okay, let's target this specific person, and we'll actually have, whether that be a person in first-party certification, that's generally the case, and actually get them to report that the issue has been fixed. So we just actually have the user account ahead of time. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, is there, like you say, you deliver an asset manifest.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
So
sorry. Yeah.
how do you target that?
The manifest has a security level, and the manifest then dictates whether this is available for everybody or only a certain list of users. So per platform, we have, in every manifest, there's a per platform list. In every manifest, there's a list of the people that are allowed to have it so far. If it's allowed for everyone, everyone gets it. So everyone else will retrieve that manifest. It's just only if you're on the list, you're only going to have the update applied if you're on that list in the first place. So everyone does get that manifest, yeah. Awesome.
Hi. How okay with this are the console platforms? Like, how do you kind of work around TRCs and that sort of thing?
It still goes through certification. So
Right.
if you're taking, like if you're doing a CPC, you pray everyone's awake at first party. It's still, you can still have, you know, I don't think first party would be happy if we were to break things after they've already approved a build and said it was okay. So it's still going to go through first party.
Yeah, I guess like there's usually, I don't know for how this is for AAA games, but for non-AAA games, there's usually quite a long turnaround in that process. So I'm wondering, like, is this actually viable for anyone other than AAA?
It's a good question. I'm not too involved in that sort of whole side of like talking to certification with that. I still know it goes through certification though. CPCs could potentially take up to a couple of days to release, similar to like rapid patching, depending on which first party you're using as well. It also does depend too. Again, this is why we were aiming for weekly CPC releases as well. As much fun as it would be just to like cowboy code it and be like, aha, this works. That probably wouldn't be appreciated. So it's still viable. It also, again, does prevent players having to do a mass. Like the big thing of it, the big thing of it though is this does prevent having to make a whole new package build. That's all the whole reason for it. So things like, again, like a loading screen, we can change that within a week because you don't want to have to do a whole new package build that then someone on their console goes, hey, okay, new first party update. It just means that, again, prevent having to do a whole new package build to get that off there. So I'd like to think very viable. Again, it's having that process locked down and practice as well.
Thanks. Hey, with the kill switches,
Yes.
how do you deal with all the different combinations of kill switches being active or inactive at once in the live game? I'm assuming you got lots of legacy kill switches in the code base.
We do.
Yeah, like how do you do massive regressions across all permutations, or you just hope, or?
So the kill switches are only everything. I'll go back to the previous slide. Can I? You know what? I'm going to skip and just do this. I'm going to cheat.
Please don't break it.
Come on. Cool. So, can I can play from current slide? Magic. Cool. My coding's better than this. I do apologize. So yeah. So everything's going to be registered at startup with a default value. So when we need to change a kill switch, we have like effectively just a text file that goes, this is the kill switch and this is its new value. So everything's working in dev most of the time. If things need to be changed in live, we have like a text file which might have, say, 8 of them overwritten. And we go for the next tile update. We go, do these still need to be overwritten or not? Or has the default value been updated? So we don't have like a massive list of like 10,001 file and go, oh, you know, is this one overwritten or not? They all have default values from the start. So does that answer your question? Sorry, but can you clarify them? You can send me after the talk if you want. We can clarify. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Hello. So you can send out changes to selectivity to certain users. I was wondering if you can also do it for larger groups to facilitate something like split testing, where you can test out something to see if it's performing better than the baseline feature.
Probably can. Have I done that? No. That may be a thing that is happening. Call of Duty World War II is a very large game with lots of people working on it. That might be a thing that's being used, but I can't directly comment if that's like a thing. I haven't personally experienced that, so yeah. Yep, great. If it hasn't, then sweet, we can do that now.
Just wondering what sort of tools and methods you use to aggregate analytics and metrics and crashes and all that sort of stuff, and get that information to you guys and for you to process that and understand that.
Yeah, no, great question. Because we're a larger studio with a much bigger team, so everything's all internal. I haven't looked at this specifically, but I think it's like HTTP requests. When something goes wrong, we just go, hey, send this off to our back-end server and let us report an error. It's the same if you're rolling your own analytics. It's effectively the same thing. Something's gone wrong in like a VM, send the call stack along as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Anybody else?
So we still have
Like 5 minutes-ish?
5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over there.
Hi, I was just looking at the branch integration.
Yeah.
So you had like a mainline branch and a release branch. So is the
Ye-
mainline branch always under development?
Yeah. Can I find that? Come on.
So when you do a integration into release and you need to do kind of I guess like a hot fix, what happens when the mainline branch is, I guess, like too forward? Do you have to do a hot fix branch?
You cry. I've had to do that a lot. Again, this is actually probably a good question more for this minor tile update slide. This is like when we're doing hot fixes or content drops for a tile update.
But if sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just wondering, like in the mainline branch, if something that's not supposed to be integrated into the hot fix gets in the mainline branch.
Yeah. So I have it on this slide here. Where is it? I think it's under target integrations. So when I meant automate the integrations, I mean have Perforce automate everything in terms of like actually bringing the files across. I'm one of the engineers who did lots of integrations for the branch. Every integration that comes across is checked by me. So there's a JIRA associated with it that says I want to have this thing, or this target that fixes it is the thing in. If it's way far forward, I'm literally like hand going through and going, okay, I want this part of the change. There's other parts of the change can be merged out.
Okay.
With great difficulty is sort of the answer. And then we also smoke test the build as well. So
you never branch the release branch to do a hot fix?
no, not generally. When you have lots of different branches and then everyone's like, oh, was it this branch or this branch? And you can sort of manage that. But then you have issues too with just the cognitive load of like, well, I'm going to kick off a new build from this branch now. Just we generally try and have minimal branches, full integrations to the start, target integrations across. If mainline's too far forward, it just means my target integrations become a lot harder. Instead of taking 1 hour, it might take 5.
Yeah,
so,
makes sense. Thank you.
yeah.
One more question?
I need time. I get one more, yeah. We have another time already. No.
Get there.
It went so quickly.
There we go. Yeah.
Hi. Did you have to shape your data to be able to patch it in some form?
Can you clarify the question? Yeah.
So as you're sending these minimal patch, did you have to treat your data differently so that it could be live patched on the fly?
Not specifically. As I mentioned in one of the slide anyway. So the really rudimentary thing of every time we go to load a file, we'll check if there's an updated file first. So we generally just load that file instead of the other one. There's no massive need to shape our data. For things like, we'll find the slide, sorry, I lie. Where is it? Does anybody remember where it was? Here we are. So this is why we can do things like script, UI, texture, and data changes really easily, but things like models and materials, we just generally don't touch because that would involve having to shape the data versus live and on disk versus a first-party patch versus CPC versus through first party. So if there's some things that need to be changed, we might do an emergency tile update to rapid patching to fix that. So short answer is no, we avoid it because it's too complicated. We probably could, but it's just more things that are prone to breaking. So don't release a broken build in the first place. Yeah, says me. I know. Oh, shame. One more question. Oh, we're done. Any last questions, comments, heckles? One more? Sweet. Yeah, so every few minutes when we're not in a match. So if you're in a match, we are not, just to stress this, if you're in a match, we are not checking the manifest and updating the game. If someone's on a really cool kill streak, we're not going to boot them out. As soon as they finish the match, we will check it. There was a note I sort of skipped over here. As soon as they finish the match, we'll check it. And if they're in the headquarters, that social space or front end, we'll check it every few minutes. Otherwise, that's it. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.